Hi there. Welcome to My Other's Keeper. I want you to say hi to my friend Gwen. She is this amazing woman I have known since high school. And over the years, we've kind of come and gone, but our friendship has never died. And that's one of the best parts. She's had some fairly severe health issues over the years. But the most exciting one recently is osseointegration. And that's something that I don't know more than 5 people have ever heard of it. I'm sure they have, but I don't know more than 5 people who've ever heard of it. So, I was really excited to have her on and talk about it. So, Gwen, say hi. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Gwen. Um, Live in Saskatchewan, living the dream here. And I have two kids. They're adults. They have provided me with seven beautiful grandkids. And yeah, I'm one of those people who is always either in my woodworking shop or in my basement creating and crafting and making and doing. And I'm really thankful that I am a trained recreation therapist by trade, because when you lose your abilities to do the things you love, at least I've been able to find things that give my life meaning and value and purpose. And so, as a rec therapist, I may not be getting a wage from being a rec therapist, but it applies to life every day. And I'm sure we'll touch on some of that as we talk more today. But thanks for having me, Kim. It's wonderful to be here.
No problem. It's great to have you. Yeah, Gwen, working as a rec therapist, worked with seniors in a care home. And so knowing so well how to deal with people who do have some significant difficulties with movement and that sort of thing has been super valuable for her.
Mhm.
And I shouldn't talk about you like you're not here.
No, but it has been. It's been amazing.
Yeah,
There are so many days when you just want to quit and you're like, okay, I can't quit, but I maybe have to slow down and still do one thing I enjoy today.
exactly. Yeah.
And it's been good.
Well, that's great. So what are the things that get you through the day?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It's changed so much. I don't know how far back into history we want to go, but um, as a little kid, I always had trouble walking. It was always a huge struggle to walk, and most people just assumed I was lazy. And my grandpa would always say, "No, something really hurts." And then I was 9 on the playground at school, and the first dislocation happened of my knee. And then they continued and they continued. And from the time I was 9 until I was 14, I spent more time on crutches than I did not on crutches, more time in the
Wow.
emergency room than you can imagine a kid spending without a terminal illness. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, there was several knee surgeries in between. When I was 13, they reconstructed both of my knees. And then as I got older, things got bad again. And so in 2005, they went in and reconstructed my left knee and made a mistake. And so then my life kind of shut down. I became profoundly sick, like so sick that they thought I had a brain tumor. My medical team was sure that I either had MS or a brain tumor. And with my family's history of brain tumor, my mom's sister died that way when she was 38. So it was really, really a scary time. And thankfully, at that time, I had just recently completed my therapeutic rec. And so as I was fighting for my ability to function, it
Hmm.
was a matter of my kids would say to me, Mom, maybe we should still go canoeing tonight. Or, I know it really hurts, but
Wonderful.
maybe go play down with your tools, go build something because maybe you'll feel better. And then, depending how bad the days were, it was just a matter of I'm going to go do some crafts, and I love to cook. So at that point, when everything started happening, my kids were still at home. And so it was nice that when I got put off work finally for the last time in 2010, my son had just graduated in '09 and my daughter was graduating in 2011. But I still had such a huge influx of kids in my life, teenagers, when my kids were in college, even. And so I spent a lot of time in my kitchen, not because I had to, but because it made me feel alive. And where it used to take me an hour to make a pot of soup, there were days I would spend 7 hours trying to make one pot of soup because
Wow.
I didn't have the balance to stand, and I didn't have the motor control to do the things I wanted to do. But there's no way that I was ready to say, okay, I'm done. And then I had this phenomenal doctor who phones me one night on his cell phone at 9:30 on his personal phone and says, "Meet me at the clinic tomorrow morning. I've got an idea." And with his wisdom and his input, things started to get better. But thank goodness for those recreation activities and those fulfilling activities, whether it's if you're a person of faith, whether it's your spiritual practice, whether it's your something you enjoy doing physically. If you're an athlete, if you can't run, you can probably still walk. Or if you're stuck in a wheelchair and you used to run, maybe you can self-propel that chair instead of getting someone to push you. And it's just those minor little things that keep us going. And so, yeah, I got through the really worst of it. And with my doctor's help, things started to get better and better and better. And yeah, it took a couple of years and things were so much better. It was just amazing. Like, I was
those
walking.
little bits of independence too, rather than
Yes,
feeling like you're a patient at home all the time.
yes, yes.
Feeling
And
like you had mentioned years ago that your children would come home just frightened. Okay, what stage is mom going to be in when we get home?
yes,
Right?
yeah, especially for
That
my
takes a
daughter.
lot.
It was terrifying for my daughter because at that point they didn't know what was wrong. And being that they thought it could be cancer, she was always scared that she would come home and find me dead. And so the mental toll that it took on my kids, there's no way around it. It was phenomenally hard on my family when I got sick.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're also a great source of strength. Like, we need our team as much as we need to push ourselves to do what we can do. When we are faced with illness, we need our team. We need to realize that
Sure do.
Simon and Garfunkel were 100% wrong. We are
Yeah.
not rocks and islands. We are soft, mushy creatures that fall apart at the drop of a hat, and we need our team to scoop us up and say, put that crown back on, Queen, because you need to get going.
That's right.
And yeah, so it's been quite a journey. But in 2014, I had that would be surgery number 6 on my left leg. And they fused it, which means they took out my entire knee and they created one bone out of my tibia and my femur. They made a paste out of my knee and packed it all in to make the bone graft work. And my
Ew.
leg would never, ever bend again for the rest of my life. And that
Wow.
proved to be a nightmare. So many trips to the
Oh,
hospital with a ripped up back and so many injuries. And it was a nightmare. And so then in 2017, my whole medical team and I decided it's time to move forward. And so November 1st of 2017, my leg was amputated above the knee. And for everyone else, if you have never even thought about it, it's pretty traumatizing when your doctor says, I think we should amputate. But it was the best thing they could have done. It was just
I
like,
remember you being very happy,
I was
actually. It's like,
elated.
oh, yes, we can do something now.
Exactly. It was like, oh,
Yeah,
thank God it's going to be done. Like, this part of it will be done. We're going to start a new chapter, but this part will be done. And
absolutely.
no more, what's the word I should look for? No more surgeries that were just a shot in the dark to see if they would make a difference.
Yeah. The
And
exploratory kind of,
yeah, or let's try this. Let's just scope it. Let's take all the tissue, like all the extra tissue out and see if that helps. Let's try sticking a piece of metal in there, see if that does it. And I mean, when
yeah.
your quadriceps are dying because you have CRPS, doesn't
Okay,
help.
so what's CRPS?
CRPS is complex regional pain syndrome.
Okay.
And it is described as one of the top 10 most painful diseases a human body can get. When CRPS is full born at its worst, they say it's like when a lady is in labor ready to give birth. The pain is that kind of pain, but it doesn't end as soon as you get the baby out. It just goes on day after day after day.
Oh,
And so
wow.
watching my leg waste away and hurt like that was unreal. And then, yeah, they didn't know if I would ever be able to grow quadriceps ever again. And so taking my leg with CRPS was really risky in case it made it spread, but it didn't.
Mhm.
And yeah, so then we went on and took my leg, and then I got my first prosthetic 5 months after they took it. And it was a lot of work. Learning how to walk again when you're 45 is like crazy hard. Well, I guess I was 46 by the time I was learning how to walk again. It was like, oh,
Mhm.
this is crazy. But this go around, learning how to walk has been even harder. But we'll tackle that in a bit. But yeah, so it was a really great experience for me just to have the people and the support that I had through that, and to learn how to walk again. Very shortly into it, though, we discovered that my skin was reacting to all of the liners that go into a regular
Right.
prosthetic.
Yeah.
And so that became a problem. And then the sweating, they think because of all the nerve damage, normally with all the silicone in your liner, you sweat like crazy, but you only sweat like crazy under normal circumstances for 4 or 6 months, and then your body adapts, and mine didn't. And
Oh
so
no.
the incessant sweating went on and on and on. And then I became friends with an amputee from BC, and we were both looking at osseointegration, and that's how we met, was on an osseointegration or an OI forum. And he said to me, he's like, get a skin fit leg. And I'm like, okay, let's look into that. So talked to my prosthetist, and they did it. And by doing that, they cast it. It's much, much harder to build, but they cast your prosthetic. They cast your leg to build your prosthetic around, and there's no liners in between. You just use this sleeve thing and pull your skin deep down into the socket so that it's held in with suction, but there's no silicone liners, and there's only an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch of plastic around it, as opposed to by the time the liners were in and the socket, there was generally half to 3/4 of an inch of plastic and silicone and various components. And so it just really made it thinner. And by doing that, it just made it a lot easier to wear. But then my skin was
Sure.
still breaking down because I'm a short girl with some extra fat. And so when you're not a tall, skinny person, it's much, much harder to build a prosthetic. And so they did everything they could, and worked really hard at it. And I have to just shout out both of my prosthetists I've had, the one I had in Saskatoon and the one in Regina. Both fantastic people. You'll never hear a word of complaint about either one of them from me. They just have given their all. And then right when I lost my leg, my fight for osseointegration started. And I don't know how much detail you want. How much detail do you want, Kim?
As much as you like, we can put up a trigger warning. Do you need a trigger warning?
No, we won't do that. We won't go into
Okay.
that much. But, and so osseointegration started in the 50s, actually, with dental implants. And most
Ooh.
people don't think of a dental implant as being a similar technology to what happened to my leg. But at the end of the day, it really is. And so that's where osseointegration was left. They knew that your bones will osseointegrate, will grow around, and if possible into a metal implant within your body, but they don't know, they had never pursued it any further. And then in 1990, Dr. Minjed Al-Mudaris, he is an Iraqi man who fled to Australia, phenomenal man. He pioneered leg osseointegration. And so lots has changed since 1990. It was also just being researched in Sweden as well at that point. And so we've come now almost 40 years. And so
33.
Yeah, 33. Well, that feels almost like 40, but 33. Yeah. I keep thinking, where are we at?
33 is not the same as 40. I was not the same person at 33 as I was at 40.
This is true. This is so true. But so in the last 10 years, OI has really, really gained momentum, and they've really improved the quality of the implants. And so I started negotiating, advocating is probably a better word than fighting. I started bringing my case up to the provincial government right when they took my leg, because my leg was taken thinking that osseointegration might be necessary because of the CRPS, the nerve damage in my leg. They were thinking it might be necessary, because just to backtrack a little bit, CRPS, what it does is your nerve is malfunctioning, it's misfiring, but your brain gets so used to feeling pain coming from that nerve signal that once the nerve stops sending pain signals, the brain still feels them. The brain still tells itself there's going to be pain here. So it shuts off the function to that limb, if possible, in an attempt to protect you. But in the end, what it does is it causes you more pain because of all the falls that happen, or all the other injuries. And my chronic pain specialist, he described it so well. He said that the best way to describe CRPS is if you put your hand into a pot of boiling water, you don't sit there with your hand burning and say, oh, gee, my hand is getting hot, I should potentially take it out. He said, you touch that boiling water and just bam, your brain reflexively pulls it out. And that's why it used to be called sympathetic reflex dystrophy. And
Mm.
so anyway, it's just a reflex that your brain does to try to protect you, but in the end it ends up hurting you. But because of all the pain in my leg, they weren't sure how a socket was ever going to work. They were hopeful, but we went into it knowing we could have risks. And
Yeah.
so then after 6 years of negotiating with the provincial government, all of a sudden, early in January of 2023, I got a call from a girl from the provincial health office, and she said, "Hey, your file's kind of been lost in the shuffle many times, but I'm here. I'm listening. Talk to me." And what was supposed to be a 10-minute conversation turned into an hour and a half. And she submitted her not approval, but her recommendation that the government look into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so then we talked lots back and forth over the next few weeks, and I had to get all the referrals from my GP and from my physiatrist. And a physiatrist is a doctor trained specifically in post-injury recovery of the muscles and nerves. And so my physiatrist is just a phenomenal man. Anyway, he did lots of paperwork. My GP did lots of paperwork. I did about 50 pages of paperwork and sent it all on to Montreal. And Saskatchewan at that point had agreed to approve my assessment. They hadn't said any word yet about what they would do after that, but they were going to approve my assessment. And so I went to Montreal in May of 2023 and spent an entire day with the team there. It was lots and lots and lots of grueling stuff. And it was to the point with my leg, the way it was fitting, even though it was like a brand new leg that was doing really well, it was cutting me up so bad. Every night on that trip too, I would have to take my leg off and wipe blood out of my socket, because it was just so cut up. And
was it cutting up, or was it blistering, or both?
It was blistering and it was cutting. The blisters had more or less quit by then, but the cutting, the chafing, the ripping of my skin, just grabbing it and ripping it apart. And so, yeah, it hurt.
I can't imagine.
It hurt.
Wow.
And so when the team in Montreal, the thing with osseointegration is it's not for the faint-hearted, because for the rest of your life, you've got a chunk of metal sticking out of your body. You have a portal of infection for the rest of your life. And we'll talk about that a little bit more yet. But they looked at me and they said, "If you're still walking on this cut up leg, we know you've got the tenacity to go through this." And
absolutely.
So they agreed to do it. And so on the 9th, I want to say, of September of this year anyway, yes, it was the 9th. They did my surgery on the 9th of September of this year. And oh my goodness. I was just like, I don't know. There were hardly words. It's like, I knew it's going to hurt so bad, but it's like, I'm so ready for this next chapter. And
yeah,
the implant goes in about 4 inches into my femur. They had to re-amputate my leg. They had to take 8 more centimeters off just to make room so that my prosthetic knee, now for the first time since I lost my leg, my prosthetic knee bends in the same place as my biological knee. So I can kneel down now, which I couldn't do before. I can crawl on the floor with my grandkids, which was really hard before. And it's just fantastic. But also because it's a titanium implant, but it's all micropored. And so it's all, you can't see any holes in it, but it's just drilled with micropores everywhere, so that as your bone heals, it builds around it and builds into it. So if they are to yank it out after 10 years, it's quite a feat to pull it out, because your bone will actually be bonded right, not just against it, but with it. And so it's really fantastic, actually, what they can do.
Wow.
And just
you're bionic.
Yeah. Well, little kids see me in the grocery store, and sometimes wearing shorts is just easier. And they're like, "Mom, look, there's a robot lady." And I just love it. It's like, okay, do you want to talk about this? Let's talk. And I like to see my leg as a chance to open doors for people to say, don't tell your kid, shh, don't say that. Just maybe tell your kid, hey, why don't you respectfully ask that lady if she wants to tell you what happened?
Yep.
Because children are our future. And if we can make them a little bit more comfortable with illness and with difference,
Mm-hmm.
maybe when they face a difference, they won't be quite as alone. Because
Absolutely.
I I'm always amazed by the number of people that claim that they love me, but they still refer to me as the cripple. The cripple
They
does pretty good.
do.
Oh yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah. And it's time that we stop using terminology that devalues people who are just a little bit different.
For
And
sure.
and so I just think it's so cool when little kids notice my leg and say, "Mom, can I ask that?" And I'm like, "Yes, you can ask anything you want as long as it's respectful. You can ask it."
Yep. Yep.
And so they put this huge implant into my leg in Montreal. Was the only place I could get it done in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And just my little shout out to Telemiracle. If you're from Saskatchewan and you donate to Telemiracle, I'm going to cry, but that's if you donate to Telemiracle, bless you, because Telemiracle paid for my airfare for all my flights to Montreal, and there were a few of them. And they covered a lot of my hotel bills and a lot of my meals for Dale and I, my husband Dale and I. And it just made it so much easier because the government paid for the surgery and my medical stay. All the medical costs were covered, but I covered everything else. But I didn't have to cover it because thank God there's Telemiracle in Saskatchewan. I can't begin to express my gratitude to the people who run the Kinsman Foundation and who donate to Telemiracle every year. So anyway, that's my shout out. But so I was in Montreal. They did my surgery on a Saturday. The surgeon who did it says that way he can really radically reduce wait times because he does surgery when no one else wants to be in the hospital.
Absolutely.
And so they did my surgery on a Saturday and they transferred me to the rehab facility on Monday. So really short time in
Wow.
the hospital. But and then I spent a month in rehab in Montreal. And then I flew home and did 3 weeks of rehab here with no leg yet. And then flew back to Montreal and then spent another week in Montreal learning to walk on my new leg. And oh
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, it's a sensation and a half when you haven't felt your leg for so long. When they first attach it, and just a little flick, just a small little flick on the receiver as it sticks out of my skin, and I can feel it all the way up into my hip. And it's funny how quickly the body gets used to things because it's been 5.5 months now, and I can already feel less of that than I could then.
Wow.
But
Now
I
I'm
can
just
also
going to
feel
back
it.
up a little bit. And you talked about doing physiotherapy, etc. What did you have to do?
Yeah. Lots of just strength building exercises, but also the big thing that I had to learn was when you're an amputee, your prosthetic limb, your socket takes it puts pressure. Like if this is if this is what's left of your leg, your socket comes around it. And
Mm-hmm.
so by doing that, you don't actually use your bone. You have like an exoskeleton almost, and that's what absorbs your weight. And so your bone becomes incredibly osteoporotic. And
And
so
that means what exactly?
you have a really porous, soft bone that could fracture at any given point. And
Because there
so,
isn't the pressure that's keeping it strong.
right, your bones become much more
Right.
calcified when they're used. It's the
Yeah,
same as if you've been in a wheelchair for a long time. Even if you have muscle tone, you can't just leap up and walk after 10 years in a wheelchair. You have to build
for
bone
sure.
strength. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would have to stand in parallel bars with um, my implant. There's a little adapter they have for it. They call it the mini prosthesis, and it's like a 6-inch round steel disc that attaches to the bottom of the implant. And then that sits on a scale. And so for the first 4 days, 5 days, it was 4 days, I think. Anyway, it was putting 5 kilos of weight through it. And that doesn't sound like much, but it's really hard to stand on one leg and carefully measure 5 kilos of weight into the other leg and maintain proper posture. Because if you've been injured for enough years, like my leg's been giving me grief since I was let's just say since 2005. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had developed a habit without realizing of walking twisted with my left leg kind of pulled up towards my belly, just twisted to kind of
Mm.
protect my left leg. And so it took a huge amount of endurance for me. I had to build that endurance to learn to stand straight again, because I didn't realize how crooked I stood. And my physiotherapist in Montreal would always have a mirror in front of me, and she'd say, watch yourself. Shoulders need to be straight, back needs to be straight, pelvis needs to be straight, and then put the pressure into the leg. Don't twist the leg, stand straight before you start. And so I would end up sitting down a lot for the first while, because you've just come out of surgery too. Like we started the weight bearing routine 3 days after I got to rehab. So it wasn't even a week since they put the thing into my leg that we started putting weight into it. And
Right.
and so we had to build bone density. And this is what the 7 weeks were about, was every 3 to 4 days, depending where I was on the schedule, I would bump up by 5 kilograms. And I could only get permission to walk once I was loading 50 kilograms. And 5 kilograms is really hard to load because you put more into that leg. But 50 is also hard because you're really, when you're short like me, you're really leaning into it and putting a lot of pressure on
Yeah.
to try to get it, because then you can't stand straight either, because
Right.
you've got to put so much pressure into that one side. But
Right.
when we
Okay, now
finally got
just for those who aren't in Canada, 50 kilograms is how many pounds?
50 times 2.2, is it 110? If I'm
That sounds about right. So 110 pounds on that one
on that
fever.
steel rod in the bone, yeah, just to
Wow.
force the bone to pull calcium out of your body and push it back into the bone, because
Wow.
it had lost so much calcium in the 6 years. Well, the whole getting it fused in 2014, to do that, all the bone marrow was stripped out of it to start with, and then the steel rod is
Right.
put into it. So there's just, this leg had been through a lot. And so I
Were
was
they able to
really,
reuse that steel rod, or did they have to pull that out and
that,
insert something different?
that had to all come out. When they took all of that steel rod out of my leg,
Yeah.
that took just as long as amputating. It was all done the same surgery, and that took just as long as the amputation itself way back in 2017.
Wow.
And so, yeah, my exercises were strength building, but also building bone. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have a scale here at home too that I had to use for the 3 weeks I was at home, and a mirror, and I got a bariatric walker. Bariatric is a walker designed for anybody over 400 pounds. I got a bariatric walker so that it would be wide enough to fit my scale and my stool and myself and all of those things into it, because a regular walker just doesn't have room for all of that. But
No,
again,
for sure.
my amazing team at Wascana Rehab didn't even think twice. They just sent me home with a walker and said, if this helps, do what you got to do. And
Awesome.
so then when I went back in late October, I was given permission to walk on it, but with 2 crutches for 6 weeks. And then another 6 weeks with 1 crutch. So it's only been in the
Mm.
last 2 weeks that I've been, 3 weeks maybe, that I've been allowed to even think about walking without a crutch. Now I've been limping a fair bit, so I'm still learning to walk, but it's coming. It's fantastic. I can't begin to tell you all the ways my life has gotten better already.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so many things are just improving daily. Like the idea that I can go for a walk with my husband, and I can come home so tired that it hurts, but I'm not bleeding anywhere. I'm not cut
Tired
up.
hurt feels different than pain,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yes, very
Yeah.
different. Tired hurt is so different. And my quadriceps had been wasting away since 2005, especially really
Yep.
bad from '07 to 2017, that 10-year span. No matter what I did, I couldn't grow quadriceps. And then as soon as they amputated and I started doing my physio, I remember sitting there in physio one day. I'm like, holy man, like I can feel something moving in my quads. Like there's movement in there that I haven't felt in 10 years. And so now I've got this little tiny muscle growing. It's so exciting. And it's coming. And it's just, there's things I can do now that I just haven't been able to do for so long. And like putting my leg on is just so easy now compared to what it used to be. And like getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I don't need to use crutches now. I can just reach over, pull my leg off the charger, stick it on, and I go. And
Okay, let's discuss. You have a leg on a charger. What does
yes,
that do?
again, just another, oh, I'm so thankful, because
Mm-hmm.
microprocessor knees are terribly expensive, but Osser the company that makes the Rio knee. They've come up with a Rio XC and another Rio. Anyway, so they had their baseline Rios that they they're their baseline, but still a microprocessor, and it still is amazing. And so Saskatchewan was able to get their hands on quite a few of them. And so some of us were lucky enough to have our prosthetist get our back. It was the neatest meeting, because I remember booking an appointment with my prosthetist, Taryn, so that I could tell her that I was approved for osseointegration. And she says, "You're not going to believe what I have to tell you." And so we both sat down and had a good cry together, because I had been approved for my OI and she had scored a microprocessor knee for me. And the thing with my microprocessor knee that's really cool is I haven't fallen since April. I used to fall a lot more often.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I have not fallen on my face since April of 2023, because when it feels you falling, it applies extra pressure and won't bend near as fast, so you can kind of stumble and catch your balance again.
Just like a natural knee would.
Yeah, because it's got these bioelectric magnetic plates in it. It's just bizarre. These magnetic plates in there, and this magnetic oil. There's this, I don't know if they're shavings, but whatever, this magnetic component to the oil. And
it's
as your
iron
knee,
shavings.
yeah, and as your knee is trying to collapse on you, it just increases the magnetism in there and pulls the plates together so they can't slide on each other. And
Do you
it
ever
helps
feel like
me.
Iron Man?
I just need to get that big heart, that big,
I know, right?
that shiny thing, so I can shine on people.
See, I just use necklaces for that.
There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of, it's just so many things have come together.
Oh, wow, Gwen, this is just being friends with you over this time has been amazing, to be able to watch your journey, like all through the pain of going to school together, and then how your life changed over the years with the pain, like just the increasing and varied amount of pain in different areas. Just, and then of course, personal emotional stress adds to all of that.
Yeah.
And you went through a whole lot of that for quite a number of years as well. We won't get into that today. But if you want a different day, we can, but not. So yeah, but a lot of personal stress will really increase the physical stress that you have, the psychosomatic.
Right.
Somatic simply means it is something going on without a physical reason.
Right.
Psycho means that it's in your head.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
And that's been proven with not only fibromyalgia, which I have, but so many chronic illnesses. If we can manage our stress, it radically aids in managing our physical pain. But if I let my stress get out of control, if I don't take my thoughts captive and say, what am I going to choose to think about today? If I choose to go to that dark, dark place, I almost guarantee myself that I'll be sick in a day or two. And so I'm just, I can't begin to express like how many things have come together, and how, like, you don't think how sticking a chunk of metal into your bone, not nearly that simple, but that's the dumbed down version, how it's going to change every aspect of who you are. In terms of, I was talking with a friend of mine a while ago, and they were over at our house for coffee one night, and we were sitting there yakking, and I said, it's just so cool to know that, like, at that point it was going to be a couple more weeks and I could get rid of my crutch. And he said to me, he's like, I've always thought you smiled a lot, but it's amazing how much happier you are now that you're not in so much pain.
For sure.
And for someone to be able to see that from the outside looking in, that was pretty touching to my little heart. So
yeah,
it's been
how has
pretty
it
good.
changed with you and Dale? You have been together for 5 years or so now?
Almost 2.5, actually, only.
Oh, is that it? Okay, sorry.
It just feels longer. No, it's all good.
It does. It feels like a long time. Like he seems to really be part of the family, you know?
Yeah, he is. He's a good man.
Awesome. So how have things changed between the two of you, between like even finding out that you're available for the osseointegration, all of this process? What has that been like for the two of you?
An emotional roller coaster. When I was told they wouldn't do it, I wasn't approved the first time. I was denied the first time because of the CRPS. And then And then I kept advocating and saying, I've lived with this for a lot of years. You should try to hear me out and hear what I'm telling you. And they're a really good team over there in Montreal. And so when they said yes, I think he cried almost as many happy tears as I did. And it's just neat to see my husband making plans for the future that don't involve, we'll have to plan a break here and we can't do anything on this day or that day because Gwen's leg will get too sore and then we'll have to stop. And it's nice that he can now relax a little bit more about me not falling as much. He doesn't worry near as much about that. But it's also just the idea that I have more ability now, and he doesn't have to watch me spend hours every day bandaging up a leg that's cut up and raw and find ways to push through the pain. He knows me well enough to know that maybe other people can't see it, but he can see it when I'm gritting my teeth and saying, I can do this. I have to do this.
Absolutely.
Quitting isn't an option.
Yeah.
But it's nice when quitting isn't an option, but finding solutions to the pain is. Because for a long time, there wasn't a solution.
No.
Right?
Right.
My team had done everything they could, and they did so much for me, but it still wasn't enough to really, to work around this leg was really, really hard. And so for Dale, it's been fantastic. It's probably been just about as emotional for him as it has for me. It's also been painful for him.
Yeah.
I sometimes forget.
Can't imagine rolling over at night is fun.
Exactly. I was going to say, I sometimes forget I've got this big chunk of steel that sticks 3 inches out of my body. And the other night I had a muscle spasm, and without even realizing it, I just jerked my leg and I kicked him with it. Oh, that poor man, like the bruising. I felt so bad, and I don't know how much sleep he got after that because he had quite the bruise. But all in all, he's been a fantastic support, and I don't know. I just am so grateful that he's not been scared. He's probably been more scared than me because I'm more of the cowboy in this group.
And you've been dealing with it your whole life, right? He's only been dealing with it for a short time.
Right. And he's just also more of a, let's think this through. And I'm more of a, I jumped and I don't have my life jacket on.
Let's get her done.
And so it's been really good. He's been a balancing factor for me. And I don't know, he's coping really well, but he's also really excited. Like he gets all glossy-eyed talking about all the plans he has for this summer because it doesn't hurt near so bad to walk anymore. Like now the hurt is tired hurt. It's not the same as injured hurt.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
that's got to feel so good. And you don't have to worry about your wheelchair and
you don't have to lug it around.
Exactly. You can, Gwen loves motorcycles.
Yes.
Tell us about that passion and how that's had to change over the years.
Well, I sold my bike when I was a teenager to buy a car. And then I got married and had babies and didn't have time to worry about bikes. And the plan was always when my kids left home, I was going to buy a bike or a sports car. And then in 2014, they fused my leg. And I'm laying there in a hospital bed in Saskatoon, higher than a kite on pain meds, but still in so much pain I couldn't think straight. And my buddy walks in the room and he's got a beautiful Harley. And I just start crying and I'm sobbing hysterically. And he's like, what? And I said, I'm never going to be able to ride again. I can't bend my leg. I am never going to be able to ride again. And I mourned and I grieved and I was just crushed. And then I went home and couldn't do the stairs up to our bedroom in the loft for a long time. And I finally, it was an audible conversation. It was a conversation I had out loud. And there again, it's the recreation therapist in me, but I was sitting there at 2 a.m. in more pain than I can express. And I just looked at my leg and I said, you have taken the last piece of my life. You don't get 1 more centimeter of my life. I'm done giving my life to you. And it sounded like I would have lost to somebody on the outside looking in. It might've looked like I was crazy, but you have to remember this leg has been tormenting me since I was a little kid. And
it had a life of its own.
Yeah. And I was just so frustrated and so I don't know if angry is the right word, just done with this leg taking any more parts of my life, and so determined that I'm going to claw my way back to leading a life that's because I don't want to say worth living, because life was always worth living, but leading a life that's more enjoyable and
I was
less
gonna say
about pain and more.
joyful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I like to think I'm a joyful person, and I
you
don't want
are.
people to look at me and say, "Oh, that person's all about herself and her pain," because life is so much more than that.
Yeah.
But like I love camping. I love camping and
Mm-hmm.
motorbiking and being out in the forest and
Mm-hmm.
and so when I had this conversation with my leg, I started looking online at Can-Am spiders. And so my surgery was in January or February of 2014, where they fused my leg. And by May, I had gone out and bought myself a spider that I really couldn't afford, but I was really determined that I was gonna
Yeah.
start clawing my life back. And
Yeah.
so I've got this beautiful Can-Am spider. She's a burnt copper. She's just a beautiful color, copper and black, and it's hot. And I love
Copper's a
that thing.
wonderful color. What are you talking about?
Oh, it's lovely. And so then a couple years ago, before I even knew that I was going to get OI, I got a really, really good deal on a little tiny Yamaha. And my buddy Mark and I ripped that thing right down to the frame. We left the engine intact because the guy I got it from sold it to me super cheap, but he said it hasn't been turned over for 30 years. So I can't promise you that that engine isn't seized.
Wow. Yeah. At
It's a
least he was
1980.
honest.
It's a 1980 and it's beautiful. It is showroom perfect. It's got 2,700 original kilometers and it's so beautiful.
Oh,
And
wow.
so my buddy Mark and I, we went through every square inch of that bike, and she runs like a top. And so the goal is to get back on two wheels either this summer or next, depending if I can figure out the shifting, how to move. I've got to move the shifter from the left side to the right or to my
Mm.
hand, because my spider I shift with my
Hand
thumb.
might be better. Yeah.
Yeah, my spider I shift with my thumb, and it
Yeah.
works really well. You know, accelerate
Yeah.
with your right hand, shift with your left.
Right.
And so I'm just excited that, but even the idea of camping now is so much less frightening because my leg doesn't fall off any old time and it's not cut up. And it's just, there's so many things that the future just looks promising. And as my grandkids said, Goma, you're walking better. So it's just nice that, you know, to be able to be walking better and to be able to see that there's just so much life left to live.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
at the same time, it's it's humbling too, because when you think about the number of years that have gone into this technology, and Canada is only now beginning to embrace it.
Yes.
And you think about the years that Dr. Turcotte and his team in Montreal spent studying and flying to Australia for session after session after session of
Mm-hmm.
learning and becoming proficient at what they do. At this point, when I had mine done, I was number 55 that the team in Montreal had done. And so today there are still less than 120 people in Canada with osseo-integrated legs. I can't say with osseointegration because there's lots of dental implants, but as far as
For
leg
sure.
osseointegration, and
Do
so
they
we're
ever do
still
it to
very,
arms or anything like that? Or is it simply because of the long bone in the leg? Would they be able to do it, say, to your arm if you had it above elbow?
yes, yes, they
Okay.
could there, and they're looking into all of those things, but it's just harder again. And same as when they do a below the knee
Mm-hmm.
osseointegration, they put the implant into your tibia and your
Mm-hmm.
fibula. It stays in your flesh, but it's not anchored
Mm.
into it, and it still provides
Mm.
you with some structural stability. But
Right.
it's
And then the sensation as well. Like that
oh,
was one of the big things you had mentioned is the feeling of hitting the floor. You actually now feel it in your leg
you
instead of
feel it.
feeling it in a pocket.
Right. Yes. And so like that's when it gets tired, I can really feel it. And we're looking at what they call a torsion damper. We're looking at seeing
Mm.
if we can fit it into my short little limb because we're running out of room to add any more components. But if we can fit one in, that should help reduce some of the impact in the bone. But yeah, there's just so many things that they're doing now that they weren't doing years ago that are giving amputees this ability that we didn't have before. And I mean, sadly, if you're diabetic, you don't qualify. If you're morbidly obese, you don't qualify because your body, they studies have found that people who are morbidly obese develop deeper infections. And they think that just could be because of their circulation, your vascularity in those limbs. And you also can't have heart disease or vascular disease. And so there's, and you can't smoke. Yeah, you can't be a smoker either. They won't do it if you smoke.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of surgeries they won't.
Right. And so there was a lot of hoops, there was a lot of things that had to be crossed off the list before they could go forward, but they did. And like, you think about the number of people that it takes, going back to my We Are Not an Island. I not only have my core support group of my friends and my family that are fantastic, and they are my day-to-day everything. They are the people that see me through on the daily basis. But I mean, I've got my physiotherapist that I see on a very regular basis. I've got my physiatrist. I've got my prosthetist. I've got my 2 nurses in physiatry who are absolutely amazing at what they do. And we're all learning together because I'm the first person that they've dealt with on a regular basis that's gone through this. And then there is the whole surgical team in Montreal and all the people there between surgeons and nurses and physiotherapists and psychologists. And because you have to go through a really significant psych evaluation before they will do it, because if you're easily scared, this is not the thing to do. Because, I mean, I've got a friend who's had this done, and he said there are days he still looks down and thinks, what have I done? Because this thing sticks out. But then he just gets the giggles and says, what are you thinking? You're walking better than you ever have. And so it's just,
you had mentioned,
really fantastic. No, go ahead.
Well, you had mentioned earlier in our conversation before recording that there was a young woman who was turned down. Why was she turned down for this surgery?
Simply because they didn't know if she was emotionally ready for everything that it carries with it. Just because until I guess it's like everything in life. It's hard to change where you are today if you can't accept where you are today. And so I think about myself as somebody who's overweight. I don't lose weight until I've made peace with the fact that I have weight to lose. And I think one of the reasons that people, besides the health reasons, like the smoking, the heart disease, all of that stuff, another reason that they turn people down is if you haven't accepted the fact that you are an amputee, and every time you look down, that leg is still going to be missing no matter what they do. And if you can't get your head around that, then you're probably not ready to have this surgery, because you're still going to be an amputee. Yes, it's going to make life easier, but you're still going to be an amputee at the end of the day. And I think they just don't want to throw anybody into a depressive tailspin, because once it's in, it's a no going back kind of thing. Exactly. Like right now, I lost those 8 centimeters off my leg. So in the event that it failed, it would be really hard to build me a socket now, because my leg is 8 centimeters shorter than it already was. And it didn't have a whole lot to play with to start with.
8 centimeters is approximately 3 inches or so. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are you willing to show us your leg?
Oh, heck. I show everybody my sexy leg. I had to figure out, I'm just going to tip the camera down a little bit, and that might make it easier. Sure. So it's only bandaged because I've been treating this hypergranulation tissue, and it seeps a lot. So this is what it looks like coming out of my leg. And this is my implant. This is the part you can see. When the stoma is cut in the skin, when it was first done, I could actually look in and see my femur in there. It was really cool. And then to take it off, it just goes like that. And it pops off, and there's no socket, no pulling, no. And you'll notice that this thing here, this part weighs probably a good 12 pounds. So as soon as I take it off, I find my leg jumping up because it's so light. And then
looks like a machine gun.
Yeah.
Machine gun leg.
Yes. My grandkids think I should get a weapon put into it.
Absolutely.
So that's what it looks like. And then, like you can see there, the hole was about, I gotta put this up again. The hole was about that big at the beginning, and now it's closed up It's 99% closed up. It's just, there's been some hypergranulation tissue, which is granulation tissue is the tissue your body produces when a scar is healing. But hypergranulation tissue is when it starts growing really excessively. Used to be referred to as proud flesh. It just kind of grows up and sticks up. And it was sticking up probably 3/4 of an inch. It was really bad. But
Wow.
again,
How do you keep that from happening?
you don't keep it from happening. You just tackle it when it does. And because I got an infection when I was still in rehab, that increases your chance of it happening. But I mean, we were on the infection, but as soon as I noticed the pain, 2 hours later, they swabbed it. And within 3 hours of having it swabbed, I was on antibiotics.
Excellent.
Yeah, they were amazing. And so they just, they've burnt it off with silver nitrate, cauterized it. And then I've been doing a lot of research and really been holding it at bay using just a lot of table salt on it, just keeping it. But then you have to be really careful for the skin around it so you don't dry it out and make it crack and keep everything soft and supple yet. But I've got it down from 3/4 of an inch down to less than a millimeter. So it's just,
That's
it's basically
awesome.
going. Yeah, it's been a long road, but it's coming. Yeah.
Oh,
so
Gwen, I cannot tell you how full my heart feels just knowing where you've been and where you are right now. Oh my goodness, it is just such a beautiful thing. Oh, wow.
And that's just it. And I want that for my fellow man. I want that feeling for not only my fellow amputees, but having lived with chronic illness. I want that for my fellow man. So if my advocacy and my long journey with the Saskatchewan government means the doors open for other people of this province or for other people from other provinces, I don't care what province you're in. If you need to talk, I am always here. I mean, we need to support each other. We need to hold each other up, but we also need to do what we can to open doors for each other so that when we're going through these hard times, hopefully we can make the journey easier for each other.
Are you willing to give out your email, or is there a different way? Should they get in touch with me perhaps, and then I can put it through to you?
You can throw my email up there if you want.
Sure. What is it?
It's my old name.
Gwen?
No, it's Gwendolyn Nickel.
Okay.
Didn't change to my married name yet. At gmail.com.
E-L?
Yeah, GWENDOLYNNICKEL at gmail.com.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just neat to see doors opening up, and if we can do that for each other, if we can make the journey easier for each other, we should.
That's what this whole channel is all about. Getting together, learning from each other through the difficult things that we've been through, and then how do we get through them? Like that's just such a thing. So today we've got you on Thursday. What am I doing Thursday? Oh yeah, there's that. We're going to be talking about the sexual assaults that she went through with our father. So that's going to be a very emotional one for us. I don't know, because we've been able to gird our loins, I don't know exactly how teary we'll be, but it's going to be definitely a trigger warning kind of day, because it's something we're going to have to talk about fairly thoroughly. But being able to take that situation and say, okay, what has gotten us through that? Taking your situation, what has gotten you through that? So other than simply, let me say, not other than, how have you kept up a positive mental attitude?
When I was at the very darkest point in my life, after the 2014 surgery, I became convinced that life would be better for my children and the man who is now my ex-husband if I could die. If I was dead, their life would be better. And that plan fell through, thank God. But it reminded me of how important the things we think about are. And so when I've been at my absolute lowest, it sounds so cheesy, but one of the things that I will do, because sleep at night has been really, really hard because of physical pain and because of just fibromyalgia issues. And
Mhm.
so I would mentally go through the alphabet, starting at A, skipping Z and X and Q sometimes, but three things, or a person, a place, and a thing, and go through this exercise. What am I grateful for in the A category? What am I grateful for in the B's? Who is somebody who has changed my life in a C category? When I think about
Mhm.
a D, is there something that's really given me strength today? And by going through that, and sometimes just physically listing them, not only in my head, but on paper, like making that list, and then sitting down with my close friends and saying, what are you going through? How can I pray for you? How can I support you? How can I uphold you? Because you are holding me up without even realizing it. So how can I hold you up? And
Mhm.
one of the things, my friend Bev was with me when I lost my leg. She came to Edmonton with me. She stayed with me, and it cost her a fair bit of money. And I was
Mm.
going to pay her back at one point. And her husband said to me, he's like, Gwen, it's money that we're talking about. And she had it, and she willingly invested it. She didn't give it, she invested it. He's quick to clarify that. She invested it in you. And if you insist on giving it back to her, you steal from her the joy of giving. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks when he said it, because we need to focus on the joy of giving, the joy of what we have. When I've been incredibly down, like I said, I love my kitchen. Many, many people have eaten a lot of cookies and pies because Gwen's been sad. And so I bake and I cook and you know, and it's just a mental exercise. There again, the therapeutic rec. I mean, I always say my woodworking shop has been my link to sanity through the
For
darkest
sure.
days, because I mean, I was still on crutches after losing my leg the first time, and I was out in the shop, and then I went and dropped a table saw on my foot. Probably not the best idea.
Ow!
Broke my big toe in 3 different places,
Yes.
but at least I was having fun. So, I don't know. It's important to A, find your tribe,
Yeah.
and B, express gratitude whenever you get the chance. Like, don't be insincere, don't be flaky, but be honest. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for my car. Or, when you wake up in the morning, often the first thought I have is, I am so thankful that I slept last night.
Yes.
And just general expressions of gratitude, because if the people who we find strength from know that we appreciate them,
Mhm.
chances are less likely that they will leave. You know,
Yeah.
we tend to gravitate towards people who make us feel valued.
Yes.
And so if we can make other people feel valued, we feel better, and it builds other people up too. So I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but for me, it's just, I'm not one of those people who tends to lay down and wallow in self pity to start with.
Mhm.
But even if you are, you can still practice exercises in gratitude. Like, force yourself. Like, I had a teenager tell me a while ago, there's nothing good in my life. And I said, well,
Really?
I'd like you to go sit outside at 40 below, get real cold. Don't wear a jacket, don't wear boots. And when you come in, tell me there's nothing good left in your, because you won't come in unless it's good to be inside.
Right.
Oh, never thought of that. I'm like,
Yeah.
so as much as it sounds minor and petty, list the things that you're thankful for, things that we take for granted.
Yep.
Walk through a homeless encampment and tell yourself that you don't
Mhm.
have a lot to be thankful for. You
Mhm.
know,
And if you can't walk, look out your window. Take a
yes,
look at some birds. If you
yes.
are having I'm having another friend of mine on the 15th. She has fibromyalgia as well. So we're going to be
Mhm.
talking about her journey with fibromyalgia, and she's got some other things going on in her life that I don't know if we'll have time to talk about on that day or if we will end up talking about it on a different day. But she's had a lot of difficulties. And for her, um, just having a craft like you do with your woodwork, having a craft, something to do with your hands, and a plan to move forward. Because if you just and sit, nothing happens, right? And nothing's one of the worst things you can do because that actually degrades what's going on.
I don't know how many times I've told my clients at work, I would love to push you in your wheelchair, but I'm not doing you any favors then. So how about
Yeah.
if you walk
Mm-hmm.
and I will push your chair behind you and you walk as far as you're able. And then when you're tired, I will push you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And I think as your friend has affirmed, we need to do what we can and
Mm-hmm.
stay busy. Nobody heals just laying on the couch.
That's right.
Nobody's life gets better just watching TV.
No.
So
Yeah.
stay
Oh,
positive
that's
and
awesome.
stay happy and just search for the good in your life. If you can't see it, search for it. Dig deep
And
and
if you
find
can't
it.
see it, maybe search for a person who can help you see it. Like
Absolutely.
connection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without connecting between people, you'll rarely come upon these ideas, these encouragements and stuff like that on your own when you're already feeling like everything is coming down on your head, right? Sometimes
Yes.
you need another person, or frequently you will need another person to be able to say, okay, let's talk about, like you did with that teenager recently,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They needed you to be the one to speak into their lives. And
Yeah.
sometimes we all need that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Gwendolyn Wagner, you
Yes,
definitely need a new email address.
I think I
Um,
do.
anyway, so Gwen, thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions for Gwen, you can email her, or if you have any questions for me, you can email me at myotherskeeper@gmail.com. And I would be more than happy to talk about a situation that maybe you have a challenge with, or maybe some encouragement you want to give as well. So please reach out and touch someone.
Yes,
You
keep
know,
being awesome.
that's right.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Kim, and thank you for your encouragement.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you staying and really delving into what this has meant for you. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
Good
we'll
night.
see you later.